The Chicago Bulls rally but fall short as they get beat by the Brooklyn Nets 112 to 109. We're going to be talking about the key takeaways from tonight's loss. And so before we go ahead and we jump into it, I first want to remind you to slam dunk on that subscribe button, just like Modest Buzelis slam dunks in games. And so in exchange for slamming on that subscribe button, I'm going to give you nothing but daily content around the Chicago Bulls. And so make sure that you hit that like, you hit that subscribe, and you join the Chicago Bulls Insider family as we talk nothing but Chicago Bulls basketball. And so with that being said, let's go ahead and let's jump into it as we're talking about the key takeaways from tonight's loss against the Brooklyn Nets. And so I always like to start with the points that describe what we saw in this game. And so I have two. And this first one, probably the most important one, and it's that the Chicago Bulls really had a tough start. I think that was really the difference in this game because they did work their way back from a 20-point deficit only to fall short. And so you can only imagine if the Chicago Bulls would have played just a little bit better in the first half, they might have been able to close down the Brooklyn Nets, but that just was not the case tonight. So in that first half, really the Bulls could not make anything from downtown. So they just couldn't hit anything as far as knocking down that three ball. And also too, they just struggled collectively there on offense at one point. And then the Nets, they had 9 players who scored a basket there. And so the Nets could not miss. They had a lot of players that scored as well. They put the Chicago Bulls into a 17-point hole there early on in the first half. And so that was a tough start there for the Chicago Bulls. And then that leads us to the next point here. And it turned into a grinded out game that came down to the clutch. And I just love the response from the Chicago Bulls, especially in the third quarter. Got to give Coby White a lot of credit for the way that he came out there in the third quarter and got some stuff done. The Chicago Bulls were able to find their way back from 20 points down, and they did it with some great runs. At one point in this game, I believe it was like a 28-10 run for the Bulls to get back into the game. They had some great ball movement. They were trusting themselves on defense out there and making the plays that they had to make. And so I love seeing that. They had a nice little 7-0 run in the last 42 seconds to take the lead. But then it came down to the Brooklyn Nets getting the basketball. They got a nice little out of timeout play called up there for Michael Porter Jr. And so I think that he made a tough layup. You know, you could look at that and say, hey, you wanted to see Coby play a little bit better defense, but still it was a tough adjusting layup that he makes to essentially give the Nets the game winner because the Chicago Bulls would come back down. It was an inbounds pass and Drake Powell would end up stealing that away. And so that is one of the draft prospects that we talked about in this last NBA draft. And so the Brooklyn Nets drafted him. He was able to use his length as Trey Jones was trying to get the ball in, and the Nets were able to get the steal. Then that would lead to where the Chicago Bulls would get one last chance. They needed to hit a three-point shot. It went into Vooch, and it was off the mark there. And so just a tough finish for the Chicago Bulls. I love the fight at the end, but you just wonder if they just could have played just a little bit better in the first half, if they could have been able to close this out. And so it just wasn't the story for them today. And so next, jumping into just looking at the starters and also to the bench as we take a look at each player and their performance. And so starting with the player that I think certainly played one of the stronger games for us today, and that was Nikola Vucevic. And so I think that Vooch continues to play well as far as getting to the paint here the last couple games. And so I liked seeing that. At one point, I believe Vooch was like 6 of 7 as far as getting inside and scoring at the paint. You could see that he did not take a lot of three-point shots. And also, too, what I loved about Vooch is that he had some clutch plays in this game down the stretch. Man, he had a nice little steal. That was huge. That led to a Trey Jones layup. Also, too, he had a nice block shot as well. And so that is a couple times really over the last couple games, we are seeing that from Vooch. I talked about that against the Rockets as well. And so I'm liking this version of Vooch. Can he continue to play this way? And so he had a strong one today. And so 19 points, a +8 in the plus-minus box score, 6 assists, 1 of 3 from downtown, 9 of 14 from the field in 33 minutes. He did have that 1 turnover and 1 personal foul. But again, a +8 today. I like the way Vooch approached it. And so next, another player that played strong for us, and that is Modest Buzelis. And so I know when you look at the shooting percentage here for him and just looking at the field goal attempts and stuff like that, it was a tough day. And so, you know, I'll give you that. In fact, starting off, it didn't look good for Manas Buzelis. He was 1 of 8 to start off, and he had a pretty bad sequence there because he had like a run out dunk. And so he has the basketball. It looks like it's going to be showtime dunk. In fact, I believe that is what, Stacey King had said, on the broadcast, but it did not happen as he went up for the dunk and he missed it. And so after that, he comes back down and then he has a bad foul, which leads to, I believe it was either and one or they get to the free throw line. And so it was a tough sequence there. And he also had another bad foul, but Manas Buzelis kept the confidence. He kept shooting the basketball. He got to the 15 points, which was his average. And initially they gave him 5 blocks, but it looks like that they adjusted that and gave him 4. And so had 4 blocks. I believe that ties a career best in a game for Manas Buzelis. And I just like the way that he did it because there was one block where he is facing up against the person that he is defending, and they try to move him out the way. He doesn't go anywhere, and he rises up and swats the shot. So I've always said this with Manas Buzelis, that once he gets stronger, he understands the defensive principle and locks in a lot more there defensively. He's going to be able to just start knocking the ball into just whoever he's guarding's face there. Like, I think he's not going to be the one that's going to have the chase down blocks. Like, literally, you're going to try to shoot the basketball over him, and he's going to stuff it. And so Manas Buzelis showing us some growth here. And so 15 points, a +7 in the plus-minus box score. He had the 4 blocks, the 3 assists, the 6 rebounds. He also was 5 of 6 from the free throw line, 2 of 7 from deep, 4 of 15 from the field in 32 minutes. Again, I loved what I saw from Manas Buzelis as far as his confidence, and he continues to show growth here in year number 2. Next up, Isaac Okoro. And so look, Isaac Okoro, he didn't have double figures or anything like that, but this is exactly why you love to have Isaac Okoro on your team, because he continues to battle. He had a huge play down the stretch as far as being active with the steals. He had a nice little backdoor cut as well. And so I think that is going to be the key for him. Perhaps he's going to pick it up once Josh Giddey gets back as far as distributing the basketball and him continuing to move off ball. I think that that's one of the things he has done well. And so, Isaac Okoro, he had the 6 points in this game. He had 2 personal fouls, 3 steals, 5 assists in this game, 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 0 of 1 from deep, 2 of 3 from the field in 32 minutes. And so again, love the effort from Isaac Okoro. Next, looking at the guards here. And so with Tre Jones, I thought that he turned it on late. And I just like the fact that he makes the tough layups, because Tre Jones, once the ball was ripped away and he got the breakaway to get the lead for us, it was a tough play that he makes with the layup. I like how he was able to get through the 2 defenders there. And that's something I always talk about with Tre Jones, is his craftiness around the basket. He did have 5 assists, 5 rebounds in this game. He had 4 personal fouls. He was a -6, 5 of 9 from the field in 30 minutes. And so, giving us that true point guard play, I think with Tre Jones, he's probably going to have to be even more aggressive as Josh Giddey is out at times, but still, I like the steady play that we saw from Tre Jones tonight. Next, Coby White. And so, look, Coby White got the 17 points. It was not the greatest game as far as the efficiency, but we needed it as far as what he gave us with what he did in the third quarter, able to go on a nice little mini run there. He had a nice little sidestep and one. That was nice to see with Coby White. And the biggest thing that I thought that we saw with him is that he just seemed to be more fluent out there today. And I think that is probably the biggest issue that he's had this season with these calf injuries, is trying to find rhythm. And you can just tell like his game is just not as fluid as it has been as far as the hesitations and the ball handling and everything else. And so with him, I think that the calf injuries and also to him just being in and out of the lineup has really been a challenge for Coby White in this game. And so, or not in this game, but also too, just throughout the season. And so, with Coby White, going back to what he did today, again, a big 17 points, a huge third quarter for us. And he did struggle with the turnovers again. So 3 turnovers there, 2 steals, the 4 assists, the 4 rebounds, 1 of 3 from the free throw line, 2 of 7 from deep, and 17 of 15 from the field in 33 minutes. And so hopefully he can get back on rhythm. Next up, another player that played very strong for us. And I think it's just interesting just talking about what he had last season as far as the minutes that he got, and that is Jalen Smith, because Jalen Smith is a player that you just wonder, with the way that he's playing now, how was he ever out of the rotation last year? And so I'm glad to see that Jalen Smith is getting his opportunity. And Jalen Smith did not start this game, but give Billy Donovan some credit. He went ahead and made the adjustment. I got a chance to look at his post-game press conference there, and he just felt like the size of the Brooklyn Nets, that was kind of bothering the Chicago Bulls. And so he made the adjustment. He went with Jalen Smith, and so give him some credit there. And Jalen Smith, just like Modest Buzelis, it was not a great start to the game, but I love the confidence that we saw from Jalen Smith, because at one point in the fourth quarter, he scored 12 points. He had made his last 4 3-pointers. I mean, he really, really got it going after a tough start. And on top of that, he is giving us rim protection. And that was like one of the biggest questions with Jalen Smith is, could he be a player that would give you the rim protection? And it was a block party between him and Modest Buzelis. And so I love seeing that. And so 14 points, a -5 in the plus-minus box score, the 4 blocks. He had the 1 turnover, 13 rebounds in this game. 2 of 2 from the free throw line, 4 of 10 from downtown, and 4 of 11 from the field in 35 minutes. And so another double-double for him as well. And so that's to be noted. I believe that's his 6th double-double of the season there. And so once again, Jalen Smith getting it done. And man, I just think that Billy Donovan's going to have to start to think even more about this double big lineup. And so next, Patrick Williams. And so Patrick Williams, look, he was knocking down some shots, and it looked like he was going to be off to a pretty solid game, but he ends up twisting his ankle. And so according to Casey Johnson here, he is saying that he twisted his ankle in the first half, and that he tried to go back out there and fight through it in the third quarter, but just really struggled to move laterally, and said that he's going to look to really attack the recovery and be back as soon as possible. And so that is per Casey Johnson about Patrick Williams. And so unfortunately leaves the game with an ankle injury. And so 7 points, 1 assist, 3 rebounds, 1 of 2 from the field, or from the 3-point line. And then he was 2 of 3 from the field and 12 minutes. And so next, Dalen Terry got 3 minutes in the game, a -2. He's been playing well, and so he just didn't have any stats tonight. And so next, Kevin Huerter. And so Kevin Huerter, I believe he was out there initially starting for us, 2 points in this game, a -12. And he also had 1 rebound. He was 1 of 3 from the field in 10 minutes and 0 of 2 from deep. And so with Kevin Huerter, he was coming in with, I believe, hip flexor tightness. And so I believe that probably led into the fact that he was not out there in the second half. Really, it's just the fact that he was dealing with that. And then lastly, Ayo Dosunmu. So Ayo Dosunmu played extremely strong in this game. Once again, just getting downhill. And that is what he's done all season. And so 18 points in this game. He did have 1 assist. He was 4 of 5 from the free throw line, 0 of 2 from deep today. So just couldn't find a 3-point shot, but still 7 of 13 from the field in 20 minutes. He was huge for the Bulls, especially down the stretch, with the way that he was a one-man fast break. And in fact, I think like there was one point there where it was like 12 of his 18 in the second half. And so he really heated up in the second half. And so, the Bulls come up short here, unfortunately, as I just think that it really came down to the fact that if the Bulls could have just started off a lot better, they would have been in a better situation, and really didn't even have that many turnovers as well, which we're going to take a look here at the team box score here in a second. So as we go ahead and bring that up. And so we're jumping in now to take a look here at the team box score, where we go ahead and take a look at just the field goal percentage and everything else. And so just a tough one again for the Bulls. And so starting with the team box score here, the first thing that we see is that the Chicago Bulls they shot 40 or 31% from downtown. So we'll start there because I did talk about how they struggled here in the first half. And then in the field goal percentage here, you see that they shot 48% compared to the Brooklyn Nets 43% there. And then next key takeaway out of this is that the rebounds. And so you see that the Nets were 47 rebounds, the Chicago Bulls 41. So they got out rebounded. I think that the Brooklyn Nets did get, a ton of second chance opportunities as well. And so 11-4 as far as the offensive rebounds for the Brooklyn Nets, 36-37, the Bulls lead in the defensive rebounds. 30-28 as far as the assists, the Nets lead there. And then 10-7 with the steals, the Bulls 10-4 with the block shots. I loved what we saw there. The 14-8 with the turnovers. And so that kind of goes into what I was talking about before we got to this, is that the Chicago Bulls did not turn the basketball over a lot and just come up short. And so that's what's disappointing, is just not a lot of turnovers. But, man, the turnover that they did have really cost them there, going back to that Trey Jones inbounds pass. And so 11 points off of the turnovers. The Nets gave up 17 points off the turnovers. And so give the Bulls a lot of credit there. 24-14 with the fast break points for the Bulls. 54-40, they lead as far as points in the paint. And you see that the Nets had a 20-point lead. The Bulls led with a 2-point lead at one point. I think it was the first lead they had since like 5-4 or something wild like that. So anyway, the Bulls come up short here. You guys let me know what the key takeaway is from that. And before we jump out of here, I want to go ahead and give you a little bit of a bonus as we are talking about the latest injury updates around Josh Giddey and Zac Collins. And so starting with the latest here around Josh Giddey, it looks like that he is trending upward. And so got a chance to see this. If you want to check this article out, it is under this title. Billy Donovan provides Josh Giddey injury update amid guards multi-week absence. And so this is what Billy Donovan had to say about Josh Giddey here. And so he says that there's some hope maybe on Sunday that Josh can get into practice with those G League guys and get at least some playing. Donovan said ahead of Friday's matchup with the Brooklyn Nets. So far with the ramp up that started, there's been no setbacks. I think he feels pretty good, but I'd like to see him get into one of those practices and see where he's at. But he's certainly progressing in a good way, and I feel good where he's at. And so, following up just that point with Billy Donovan before the game, Casey Johnson does mention that. I believe it was in the third quarter he talked about that. And so trending up for Josh Giddey, it looks like that the ramp up is going well. And I believe that they were saying Sunday he is slated to go ahead and practice there with the Windy City Bulls. I think that that's his first physical contact on the court. So we'll see where he's at. Obviously, he's got to, get his conditioning and everything else back. But Josh Giddey trending in the right direction. Hopefully we get a chance to see him sometime this next week as far as the games and things like that. And so that's the latest update there with Josh Giddey. The next, I wanted to talk about the latest update with Zac Collins. And so with Zac Collins, it does not seem like it's trending in the greatest direction here. And so I got a chance to see this. It was actually an article that I was seeing here that was posted on Sports Illustrated via Elias Schuster. And within the article, it talks about just really what's going on with Zac Collins. And so you guys can go check that out over there. But it takes you to a tweet from Joel Lorenzi, and it says that Zac Collins' toe injury is a pretty significant sprain, and that they've been seeking a lot of different opinions on it. Donovan says that the need for a procedure currently isn't on the table, but he'll be in a boot for the foreseeable future. So that is what's going on with Zac Collins. And that's tough news, because Zac Collins, when he's been out there, has played, I think, extremely well for the Chicago Bulls. He's averaged 9.7 points and 5.6 rebounds and 1.5 assists. In fact, I think that this is why Billy Donovan has perhaps felt comfortable going with the double big lineup, because he's been able to put Zac Collins out there at times with Jalen Smith, and these guys have been able to take care of business. And I think just recently you're starting to see a little bit more of it with Jalen Smith and also Vooch. And so, with Zac Collins, perhaps being out some more, it's going to be interesting to see what happens with the Chicago Bulls, because a lot of just, people talking about just where would this team be if they're healthy. And so, unfortunately, it's going to be some time here until we see Zac Collins back on the court. And so that's the latest update with him. Believe he has played 10 games so far out of the 47 games. And so, Zac Collins has missed quite a bit of time. And so that is also, too, I think something the Bulls will have to think about as far as what they're going to do with him with an expiring contract and then the trade deadline coming up. And just the fact that, that is really, I think, a part of Zac Collins and just his NBA journey thus far is that he has dealt with the injuries, unfortunately. And so hopefully Zac Collins can get back and contribute here to the Chicago Bulls, down the stretch for the season. And so that's the latest injury updates around Josh Giddey and also to Zac Collins. You guys let me know in the comments what you're thinking there. And also let me know what you're thinking as far as this tough loss against the Brooklyn Nets. We'll be talking some more as we have a lot more trade rumors around the Chicago Bulls. Again, that is going to continue with the Chicago Bulls having so much expiring contracts and just really decisions to make here going into this trade deadline. And so anyway, you guys let me know in the comments what you guys are thinking. And as we always say, go Bulls, and I will see you on the next one. All right, peace.